EQing is a difficult topic. You could spend hours trying to find tips on where to cut certain frequencies, but if you don't train your ears to listen to which frequencies to cut or enhance, you will be lost forever. Last week we talked about listening EQ for vocals. Today we're going to talk about listening EQ for basses, being bass guitars or electronic basses. So without further ado, let's go! If you like this kind of videos and if you enjoyed this one, please subscribe to the channel and give this video a like. Also comment down below which other sound you find difficult to EQ. The song that we're going to be listening today is this one. Which is a more pop kind of song, but with sounds that also come a little bit from rock. So you can call it also a little bit of pop rock, whatever you want. This is not going to be as complex as EQing vocals, but it has some things that you have to take into consideration. First of all, as always, the bass is not EQ'd, it's a little bit compressed. And I always compress the bass before I EQ, personal flavors. But let's listen to how it sounds and I'll explain why and where we need to cut or enhance. First of all, before even starting to tweak stuff, you need to take one important thing into consideration with basses. Basses are not only bass frequencies. I know that sounds weird, but that's the truth. A bass will have also great information on the mid frequencies and even on the high frequencies that will give more presence and character to the sound. A bass, of course, gives the ground of the song, so to speak, but it also have its own character to the songs. So pay attention to the bass and how it sounds on the chorus. And let's listen to it on its own. I have two basses right here. In many cases you will get two basses and DI and an amp recording. Just blend them whichever way you want and you have the final sound on where I'm going to EQ. As you can hear, the bass has that really nice flavor on the upper mid range, which is the pick or the fingers playing the instrument. And that is something that I quite like on the bass. I quite like the character that this gives to the whole song, and not only that, it also is a great companion to the guitars and other instruments. Remember that sound. And you will see that you will struggle to identify it on the whole song. Not only that, the bass sounds a little bit boomy. It has maybe too much power on the low frequencies, but if we lower it, we will not be able to identify it. Let's listen to it on a less bossy part. Angels, I haven't met one yet. It's been We can identify the bass a little bit better, but as it feels boomy, as it feels dark, I'm feeling that this part of the song, where the bass has a lot of presence, lacks something like in the middle to glue the low frequencies with, well, the mid and high ranges. And that's another task for the bass, to give more life to those sounds. Okay, now that we are done with the philosophy, let's start EQing, because that's why we are here. I'm going to keep in this verse part because it's easier to identify, but then we're going to go to the chorus. So you can use a digital EQ or an analog emulation, whatever you are more comfortable with. But that's only about taste. The philosophy and the practice that I'm going to give you are almost the same. So let's listen to the bass on its own again. And let's start with the higher frequencies. I have to say that I rarely lower or cut frequencies on the bass. Only when I know that there's a resonance, I do that, but I often enhance the sounds that I want. How do we identify those sounds? Just start playing around. Let's go to the top end. Now, the bass doesn't have too much information here like on 8 kHz, but let's listen and let's start lowering to hear that sizzle and that air that the bass also has. Now suddenly the bass is more open, and when something sounds more open, usually it's better. But if we listen to it on the context, you will hear that it's still getting a little bit lost.
Angels, I haven't met one yet. It's been the end.
It's still too boomy, but I like the presence that it's having. I may lower a bit of the decibels right here, but it lacks the presence that it needs.
Angels, I haven't met one yet. It's been the...
And that's when I go to the most important for me element on the mid-highs of a bass, which is the place where the finger or the pick is leaving. Now, usually this is around 700 Hz to 1 kHz, but of course it's something you need to check on context and on its own. So let's do a similar exercise when boosting vocals like we did on this other video, and choose a frequency and boost the hell out of it, then start seeing if that's the sound that we want to enhance. You may think that maybe it's too much, but before you take any decision, you have to listen in context.
Angels, I haven't met one yet. It's been the end for ages. I'll just ride this one out. What's the hurry to leave everything better? Angels, I haven't met one yet. It's been the end for ages. I'll just ride this one out. What's the hurry to angels? I haven't met one yet. It's been angels. I haven't met one yet.
In context, it's a lot more subtle than it is on its own. And this is another philosophy that I have for basses. It's going to sound better in context. I have seen examples of people that do, for example, parallel buses for basses where they completely destroy it and the bass on its own sounds terrible, but in the context sounds incredible. And that's the thing that you have to take into consideration. Don't mix the bass only as it is on its own. You need to listen to what sounds need to come up on certain sections. Before we tackle down the mid-lows and the low frequencies, let's go to the chorus so we can check for this presence area right here. It definitely gets lost when I turn off this mid-frequency range. Now, I feel this bass has a lot of low frequency information, but you still can boost a little bit. And here is a discussion, an eternal discussion that's on any kind of music, even if it's not electronic. Where do the bass lives in relationship with the kick? Because the fundamental tone of the bass, the lower E note, it's around 40 Hz, and usually kicks are around 50 and even 40 Hz too. So you have to make a decision which one you want to keep on there. And this is the trick for me. Usually I like to privilege the kick over the bass to keep a really punchy vibe. For this kind of music, more instrumental, more rock, it's not recommendable to do something like sidechaining even if it's on the lower frequencies. So what I tend to do is just high pass everything up until a little bit more than the fundamental tone of the kick. And this is not going to get rid of the bass because as the bass have more information than the kick on other parts, boosting then the harmonic content of the bass is going to give it presence and the bass that you need to feel. And that's why I cut everything below or around 70 Hz and then I boost the fundamental tone of the lower string, but not in 40 Hz, I do it on 80 Hz. So let's listen to that. I'm going to keep the kick open. It's a way to clean the bass frequencies without taking away from the bass, at least not taking away too much. And this is also good because we don't have now a boomy bass, but we have a more focused bass. And we still feel the bass frequencies on context. And remember, the context is what's more important. So now we have a bass with its own presence, and the last step you can do, and this it's really dependent on the sound, is you can boost another harmonic frequencies of the bass, which is around the 200 area. I may sometimes even boost the 400 area, but 200 to 400 depending also on the key of the song and the sound that the bass has. So let's listen to that area now. This area works because it's almost like the lower that a phone speaker can go, so this also is a little trick so your bass also translates well into other listening devices. So now our bass sounds like this. And in context, now the bass has more presence, is less boomy, and the only cutting that we did was a high-pass filter. Of course, you don't have to follow this as a recipe, you have to follow this as an exercise to listen. These are my recommended areas where to look for things to enhance. And the idea is that you look for them before deciding to boost or not. Also, don't boost the same amount. If a bass has too much peakiness, you may not need to boost too much of this area. It all depends on the original bass. And that's how I tackle down EQing basses. Again, this works for electronic basses and also for bass guitars. The idea of this process is to boost harmonic content of the basses so you give them more presence without making everything boomy or muddy. The idea is to give the presence the bass also needs to shine on the song and not to use it only as a sub-frequency. The bass, being electronic or not, has its own character, and the frequency areas that I show you today are, for me at least, the sweet spots. But again, practice that. Listen to them in context and decide by your own which frequencies are the ones that you like the best. If you learned something today, please like this video and also subscribe to the channel. It's free and it will mean a lot to me. Tell me in the comments which other sounds you need help to learn how to listen to EQ. For now, I will leave you to practice. I will see you again next time. Bye bye.